Bird Fans Forever, and you're listening to Bird Fans Forever. Go Bird! Go Bird! Go Bird!
Hello, fellow Redbirds. Welcome to Bird Fans Forever podcast number 24. If you're new to our channel, you should check out our @BirdFansForever Twitter account and follow in order to get the first notice of new videos that we publish. You can follow along there also for information and fun polls. Our website is www.birdfansforever.com, and on there you can find our links to all episodes of our podcast across a plethora of apps. Apple, Google, Spotify, and others, as well as a tab to access our videos on YouTube, where we're also called Bird Fans Forever. So dunk on the YouTube subscribe button and follow us on Twitter so you'll be the first to see new episodes and get other fun information from us. Our guest for today is Terry Smith, who was Redbird's coach from 1978 to 1985. We'll be right back with Terry.
And welcome back to Bird Fans Forever. This is January 2023. We took a 2-month break. I decided to move from Arizona to Bloomington. So we are here with the man who recruited me, Coach Terry Smith, coached at ISU. I was the first coaching class with Coach Donewald in 1978, and then he last ended in 1985, right before I came on the campus. So, Coach, thank you for being on.
Well, it's my pleasure. It's good to have an opportunity to talk about the good old days. They've been long past for some of us anyway. So this is very refreshing for me.
And awesome. And like I told Coach, I talked to him on Friday. We're recording this on Tuesday. Talking with Gerard and Sonny and the guys who I played with. They all wanted to pass along, thank you for recruiting us to be members of the Redbird. So I did tell them that, and I can tell them again, and that is awesome, right? And so, all right. So, Coach, first question, easy. It's like a slam dunk alley-oop. How did you get to ISU?
It's a really interesting story. First of all, Bob Donewald was my high school basketball coach. So he coached me when I was in high school. And his first year was my senior year at St. Joe High School in South Bend, Indiana. So he's my coach, and I graduate. I go to school in Iowa. Finished at a school in Annapolis, Indiana, and we kept in touch every once in a while. It wasn't like we talked once a month or anything like that, but we did keep in touch. When I was in South Bend, I'd go by and see him and talk to him. And then when I graduated, I got into coaching. I was pretty young coach. I started off at a junior high school and moved to the high school ranks. I wasn't a head coach, but I was an assistant on the high school level. And when Bob got the job at Illinois State, he happened to call me, and I was really surprised to hear from him. And then he said, "Hey, I have an opening for a part-time assistant coach. Is that something you'd be interested in?" And I was kind of in shock at that time, Wanted to ask me because I really didn't have that much of a coaching background at the time. But one thing about Bob that was really important is that loyalty was high on his
Absolutely.
demand list, and I'd always been faithful to him, and he's a guy that always watches out for his players, and so I said, I need to take this opportunity. So came over to Illinois State, and I got lost on the way over. I could have just cut over 94, and I went up. I was downtown Chicago. I didn't know where I was going. Of course, they didn't have the maps at that time, So,
Right.
So I finally made it here. He introduced me to the staff and everything, and I wasn't making very much money, hardly any money at all. but it was just a fantastic opportunity to be associated with him, for one, Donewald, and then to be associated with a institution by Illinois State was really, really important. But that's basically how I got over here.
That is awesome. All right. So we're going to roll into the next question. Another hard hitter, Coach. We were talking off air, right? Your responsibilities, right? Yeah. So what were you kind of responsible for?
My responsibilities, because I was a part-time assistant, generally were around campus, dealing with the kids. I was involved in on-the-floor coaching. I was involved in organizational type things. One of my responsibilities was the summer basketball camp. Bob ran a summer basketball camp, and you should be aware of that since you were involved in the summer basketball camp. But I ran the whole camp. I hired the coaches. I assigned the coaches different responsibilities. I organized the interleague games between the campers. I did a whole ball of wax, and that was that was a handful right there. You know?
It was. So we got to tell my story on that one. In 1983, I get invited to come down to the Illinois State camp. I think I'm being recruited by him, but I don't really know. And I get into the 3-on-3 championship game, and I didn't get a single call the entire game. Later, I'll find out I'm playing against Terry Smith, same name, might be related. And I played against Barry Johnson. So also, Pops they could refer to him as Pops. So I'm playing against Coach Smith's kids in the championship game. Imagine why I can't get a call. But but that's when Coach Smith and Coach Cunningham came up to me and started really talking about my grades and what I wanted to do in the future. And so Coach Cunningham always said that was a big impact on them to see me go through that and the adversity that you guys were throwing at me unintentionally.
Yeah, the camp was a great situation. And just to throw in a funny story associated with the camp, in that I was in charge of the camp. I had what they called the special squad of students who were late. When they were late, I would put them on the chump squad, and they would be responsible for cleaning up different areas around the camp. So we're in the middle of camp, and we're coming back from lunch, and whose kids are late? My own kids. So I ended up having to put my own kids on the chump squad. We ended up having to clean everything up. So that was just interesting. It was a little embarrassing, but interesting. So.
Yeah, and I know Barry because Barry played at Eastern Illinois with my teammate from high school, so I became good friends with Barry, especially after we played in Mackers and travel things. So, all right. So after you're part-time assistant, then you become a full-time assistant, and then is that when you kind of get into the recruiting wing of everything?
Right. I'm more involved in recruiting and scouting. Our responsibilities were on the floor. Our responsibilities involved making sure that we were familiar with the functions of teams that we played against. And then the recruiting was a big end of it. We tried to recruit specific areas, but we would go outside the Illinois, Indiana area. We would go to Ohio. We'd go to Michigan, the Detroit area. So recruiting was a big thing for us. Now, you have to understand, when you're at an institution like Illinois State, there are windows of opportunity in recruiting. As kids come where they think they're going to have an opportunity to play. And that had a big impact on some of the kids that we brought in. But when those kids are demonstrating a high level of ability and they're playing well against good competition, then that scares off some people. So you have your ebbs and flow in recruiting at an institution like Illinois State, a mid-major type of program. So, but recruiting was always interesting for us. Jim Platt, who coached for us and later on coached at DePaul, he was really good at organizing things, and he had a tendency to make sure that we followed up on individual players. We'd call like once a week. We'd go visit their games. I knew Chicago about the inside of my hand first year, but it was really enjoyable. I even had opportunities to take my wife with me to go recruiting, especially if it was in Chicago. It was a drive up and a drive back. But as you know, recruiting was a lifeline for us. But it was not difficult to recruit for Bob, because he was just such an honest coach who really cared about his players and made sure that they were doing the things that they needed to do, not only to be successful on the basketball floor, but be successful in the classroom.
Did it help when you were an independent when you first got there, then you moved to the Missouri Valley Conference?
Yes.
Did it help when you went to a conference from a recruiting standpoint?
I think it helped once we started winning in the conference. So when we first got in, it was pretty difficult. We had a good foundation of players, but the Missouri Valley was really tough at that time. You know, you had Wichita State, you had Tulsa, you had Bradley, you had Southern Illinois, you had New Mexico State, you had Drake, Indiana State. It was just a ton of competition. So, yeah, in the long run, I think it really did help us, and it put us in a better position to get to the tournament, to the NCAA tournament. One of the exciting things that I retain is that I coached at Illinois State for 7 years. 6 of those 7 years, we went to postseason games, 3 NIT games and 3 NCAA games. So it was just a really exciting time for me.
Yeah, and that's something I tell people, right? I got recruited heavy by Coach Smith and Coach Cunningham. And the story I always like to tell, I was recruited by Michigan, I was recruited by Illinois and Indiana. Those programs all flew me to their campus. I went with my teammate Dave Vance, who will go to Eastern and be teammates with Barry Johnson, Terry's son. And they flew me. But Illinois State, Coach Smith came up and got me on a Friday night and drove me down, and Coach Cunningham took me back. And you know, like Gerard and Sonny and Ricky Johnson, and I talked to Lou about it, and they all said that was the linchpin, right? I mean, they got a chance to sit for 2 hours or 3 hours with and build those relationships. And so,
the coach, you joined the staff. You were assistant coach at that point in time. Tell us about the relationships you had within the staff, and then the relationship that you had to build with the team that was there with Coach Smithson, and how that evolved as well.
Okay. First of all our relationships started with Coach Donewald. He was just the type of person that commanded and demanded respect, and he demonstrated such a great deal of respect for his coaching staff and for his players. When I think of Bob, I don't think there was anything more important to him than first his family, second his players, and thirdly the university itself. He would do a tremendous amount of sacrifices, make a tremendous amount of sacrifices for his players to make sure that they accomplished the goals they set out for, not only on the basketball floor, but in the classroom. He was really organized relative to study table, as far as checking up on players, making sure they're doing the things they need to do. he was the type of guy that didn't leave anything to chance. Whether that was on the basketball floor or in the classroom, nothing was by accident, and that kind of spilled over into a staff. We always had a great staff. Sam Scarridge was on board for a while. He's deceased now, but he was a real leader for us. He helped bring us all together, especially Jimmy Platt and myself and Pat Cunningham. We just gelled under Coach Cunningham. He was like a statistician. If you had any questions relative to mathematics or trying to figure something out, he could do it. He just was amazing in that way. And then Jimmy Platt, he was an organizer. He'd make sure that we called recruits, that we received recruits on a regular basis. And he would have it all organized, all written down on a sheet of paper. I'd come in and he'd hand me my instructions, and I'd go to it. But we had a lot of respect for one another, and we each did our jobs. Jimmy and I would go recruiting. Now, I don't know if Jon ever was involved in the Converse All-Star basketball camps during the summer in Atlanta. So Jimmy and I were going to Atlanta to watch some players play down there. So we're riding in a car, and I fall asleep, and we're just flying down the highway, and I wake up, and I look over at Platt, and Platt has the car on cruise control at about 70 miles an hour. He's reading the newspaper. He's reading the newspaper. I said, Platt, you're going 70 miles an hour reading the newspaper. And he said, yeah, I do this all the time, so it wasn't a big deal to him. So it was just shocking to me. So I drove.
It was a Tesla. You didn't realize it.
Oh, it was horrifying to wake up and watching the highway. So I drove all the way back from Atlanta. I said, hey, you're not going to drive, man. It may have been a little difficult for us. I think Gene Smithson was the coach.
He was.
Yeah. Bob Donewald came on board. And they were used to a different style, different approach to the game. So it was not easy with that group of players, adjusting, getting them to do the things that we wanted them to do. But we had some really good players. There was Derek Mays, and Dale Yarborough was playing, and with the 7-footer, I can't remember.
Joe Gelvin.
Yeah, Joe Gelvin was playing. We had a good team. We ended up that year, I think we were 20-10.
Yep.
When we went to the NIT that year. It was a tough year for us. It was a tough year for the players, but by the end of the year, we started to gel, and we played pretty well. But it wasn't an easy transition for them or for us, especially being as assistants. It didn't seem like you had that much power. So we tried to give instruction. They look at us like we were crazy. So what? But fortunately, Bob would always back us up. He would always have our back and said, well, you do it my way or you don't play. That's up to you. And, basically they were good kids. They came through for us. They played well. And we had a successful year.
So during that transition, Coach Smithson, he set you guys up right with an easy first game, right? We were talking about this off the air. So the very first regular season game was against who?
Against Indiana State and Mr. Bird.
Indiana State, the year they went to the Final Four, right?
Right.
Yeah. So you want to talk about that game? And that'd be pretty exciting having them come through, right? Very first game, and it was at Horton.
Well, we played. I can't remember. I thought we played him at Indiana State, but I wasn't that aware of who Larry Bird was. I mean, I scouted him and everything, but maybe I didn't read all his clippings. So, we had a kid by the name of Rick Farina, and was guarding Larry Bird. So the score is tied. I mean, and we're getting down to the last seconds. It's their ball, and coach is telling Rick, "Rick, I want you on him. I want you in his jockstrap. You know, I don't want him to be able to move." And so Rick was on him. Rick was hounding him. You know, some way he caught the ball in the corner with about 5 seconds left on the clock, and he shoots a jump shot, and he's fading out of bounds. Rick is hanging all over it. Nothing but net.
Oh, man.
Nothing but. And so, you know, we're just shocked after the game. And then, of course, then he goes so high in the draft, goes to the finals, the NCAA finals. He says, "Oh, yeah, I remember that guy. We played against him." So it was amazing. But we played against so many good players in the Missouri Valley. It was just really exciting being on that staff.
So, after the first year, what year did you become like a full-time assistant and get more involved with recruiting? And you want to talk about maybe a couple of your first recruits?
Man, you know, so long ago. I think I was part-time assistant for 2 years, and then one of the coaches, Sam Scarridge, got a head coaching job at a Division III team school in.
So let me jump in, Coach. Sam Scarridge Jr. was my roommate in college, so I know Coach Scarridge, who has passed away, but he went to Bemidji State, Division II, up in Minnesota.
A great guy. And so when he left, of course, I moved up and took on a full-time position. The coordinator, our recruiting coordinator, was still Jimmy Platt. He was still coordinating it. And he also moved Pat Cunningham up. He was a part-time assistant after I was a part-time assistant, but I think we both got moved up at the same time. And we had a very close staff. We were all really close. It was a lot of fun. I mean, it was a family atmosphere. The one thing that I don't think people quite understand is coaching at that level requires an all-in attitude. It's not a part-time position. It's not something that you do all the time. There is no time off. You're recruiting. If you're not recruiting, you're planning. If you're not planning, you're watching film. There is so much involved in Division I major athletics that it calls for a full-time commitment. And when I say full-time commitment, I don't mean 8 hours a day. I mean full-time as far as your life is concerned. And so I think that's what separated me from maybe some of the other coaches. I was missing so much of my family activity. I was missing my boys playing basketball. I was missing them going to school. I'd get home at night. They'd already be in the bed. I'd be gone in the morning when they get up. It was my decision that I didn't think that I wanted to live my life that way forever. So right. I think that's why I stepped away. Do I regret it? Sometimes I do, but for the most part, I really enjoyed like spending time with my kids, my grandkids, and that has been a dominating part of my life. Not everybody can be a Division I level coach, head coach or assistant. It is really demanding.
So, Coach, you were talking about, we asked you what your first recruit was, and I was sitting next to Dale White at the Horton game, and he claims he's your guys' first recruit. So I don't know if he is or isn't.
Dale White was the first recruit. When Bob came over to Illinois State, he had been recruiting Dale White for Indiana.
Oh, really?
Indiana had decided not to take him, so Bob had followed up on that situation, and we ended up getting Dale White, who ended up being a really good player for us. It was kind of tough on Dale, too, because he was like one of the few Bob Donewald recruits in that class. So,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, he would hear all the negative conversations about how crazy Donewald is, and but he ended up being a pretty good player for us.
So, Coach, next question. Recruiting, right? We know our version, Illinois State's version of the Fab Four, right? Ricky, Michael, Lou, and Brad. But even the ones coming before that, all the guys I watched tape of when I came in as a freshman, Hank the Tank, Lou, Mark Zwart, William Anderson, Derek Sanders, all those. So talk about recruiting that class and going to the tournament 3 straight years in a row, right? You've talked about being in the NIT 3 times. Let's talk about the big dance.
Right. Just exciting times, and there were fundamental contributions made by people like Rick Lamb and Hank Cornley, and you say William Anderson. William never started the game, but he contributed, especially in practice, challenging different players, different guards on the floor. Michael McKinney, who was just an outstanding guard for us. The one thing that I think runs true about all of those players, and you would be included in this, and I'm not just saying that, but
because you're on our podcast.
You can pay me later. There was a degree of toughness about the kids that we recruited. Every kid that we recruited and contributed to our success was tough-minded, not mean tough, but stand up against any challenge. Was never afraid to face competition. Thrived on that competition. Did the same thing in practice. Our practices were brutal. Guys would, they would get thrown on the floor, and they, the coach would say, get up, let's play, you'd foul guys, and one of the things that we really emphasized was follow through. If you're getting banged under the boards and you got an opportunity for a layup, put the ball in the basket. Our kids were tough. We played against a lot of people who had more talent than we did, and just that toughness, that desire to win, and sticking to the game plan is what got us through so many types of situations. I can think of when we played in a tournament against against Alabama. Well, we played Oklahoma too. That didn't go too well.
Yeah, you did play Tisdale.
So we're playing Alabama, and Alabama is favored to just wax us. But and Lou Stavanovich, he just played a heck of a ball game. Under pressure, shooting shots, and then Brad, and the kids that we had just were determined that they were going to complete their assigned responsibility, and they did. Hank Cornley, he had trouble shooting the ball from outside of 15 feet, but inside of 15 feet, Hank Cornley was a beast. He was a big body kid. I tell you another kid that Ray Mullane.
I totally forgot about Ray. Yeah.
He was just tough. He came out of Gary. Gary Wirt, I think, and would have been probably, I think, one of our most productive players, but I think he broke his ankle. He just never recovered completely from that broken ankle. But the excitement and the toughness was a result of the head coach. It was a result of who Bob Donewald was. And Bob Donewald made me tough. I didn't even want to be tough. And the same is true for the other people on our staff. Bob would challenge us every day to be better than we were the previous day. And not only us, but every player on that team, he would challenge. He wasn't an easy guy to play for, but at the end of the day, you knew that he cared about you and that he was going to do everything he could to make sure that you were successful on the court and in the classroom. Now, I probably got off base. I probably didn't answer any of you.
No, it's fine.
No, that was a great answer.
But I think if we talk about that toughness, right, and you look at those 3 opening round games, okay, and I know we lost the Ohio game, but before the game-winning shot, ISU went down, right? And we made a game-tying shot.
I believe it was Raymond Mullane hit that shot, right? On that baseline, about 12, 14-footer. Was it him who hit that? We'll have to check. Who hit the shot to get us up 1 with about 3 or 4 seconds to go? Was it Ray? It might have been Ray. We'll put the video up and show it at that point. But yeah. But
there's a tough shot right there. The next year, we're playing Alabama, right? And Lou hits the shot. Okay.
Right.
The third year, opening round, USC, back and forth game, and we win a very close game there too. So, I mean, I think that's the mental toughness that you're talking about.
Oh yeah, exactly. And they weren't afraid to take big shots. Brad Duncan is another kid that comes to mind. I mean, Brad Duncan doesn't look like a basketball player, or didn't look like a basketball player, but that kid was so tough. I think he was out of Anderson, Indiana.
Yeah.
I think, was he? I don't remember. We'd have to look that up.
And there was no 3-point line. We've talked about this, and he's like bombing them.
Oh yeah, just like there's no Google Map, there was no 3-point line back then. So, but it's just, I tell you what, a good example is we lost Ohio. It was a heartbreaking game, and we go in the locker room, and my expectation is that Coach Donewald is going, hey, you guys had a really great season. We played well. We didn't finish what we needed to do, but you had a great year. Are you kidding me? And he was in that locker room and he blistered everybody, coaches, players, everything. And now his thought was not here and now. His thought was next year. That I need these kids to be tough. They in this situation, but next year they may face it again. They need to be tough in order to survive it. I mean, he was thinking ahead, and I'm in shock. I was hiding. So, but as far as our kids were concerned in recruiting and the challenges they faced, physically they weren't well equipped, but mentally they were ready. They were always ready to play.
So when I look at those teams too, but I think they complemented each other as well. So, Brad provides this outside shooting, which opens up the middle. You got the guys inside that can bang. Michael McKinney, and I know I'm biased in this because he was point guard when we were there. I thought he ran the show. You know what I mean? And then you got Ricky is quick, explosive, and defensively, got the big plays and stuff like that. And then Lou's got this sweet shot, and you put all the pieces together, and maybe individually you didn't have the same talent, but I think they complemented each other as well from that standpoint, as well as being mentally tough. The pieces fit, very well.
You bring up a good point, and to expound on that point, not only did they have individual talent and skills, they were aware of what their talents and skills were and when they needed to be used. And not only individually were they aware, but they had a team perspective, and they knew when that ball needed to go to Lou. They knew when it needed to go to Brad. They knew when it needed to go inside to Rick Lamb. It just was a consciousness of perfection that Donewald instilled in them. And if they needed the ball to go inside, it went inside. You didn't see anybody taking shots from three and nobody else touched the ball. We had a concept where there's no shot until before 4 touches. The other concept, the ball has to go into the post twice before you shoot the ball. It set the tempo. It set a frame of mind for how we wanted to attack different offenses. Different defenses.
So
this is fun, man. I'm doing the coach again.
So you go to the NCAA 3 years in a row, right? And you kind of hit on this. That's when you decided to retire, right? And you talked about for family purpose. How hard was that? I mean, you guys had built something. I mean, at that point, and the Redbird Arena's announced, right? So that's coming and stuff like that. I mean, that had to be hard still to step down at that point in time.
Yeah, it was difficult, but I understood, and I think Bob understood too, that I wasn't all in. And for Bob, if you're not all in, you're not in, period. And I knew that, and I knew what Bob's line of thinking was, and my heart just wasn't where it needed to be. And for me to stay would have probably been more detrimental than my leaving.
So I'm glad you told us that, because actually I thought it was because Pemberton was coming the next year and you wanted to get out of Dodge before he showed up. But it has nothing to do with that then.
Yeah, I didn't want to mention that. But.
All right, so we talked about this before. We have to talk about this, okay? We got to talk about the Jon Pemberton recruitment from the coaching standpoint.
Well, it was really beneficial for us that he came to camp. It gave us more of an insight to who he was, not only as a player but as a person. Gave us an opportunity to talk, to realize what kind of fit he would make. And Bob just loved big bodies,
Yeah.
And he was a big body. I mean, and he still could step in. He could step in at 15 feet and shoot the ball. So that was a plus. But he could also play with his back to the basket. And in the Missouri Valley, you had to be able to do both.
Yeah.
And he could do both. And then he was a fit because of the person that he was, because of his personality, because of the priorities that he had set in his life, because it wasn't just basketball, it was also an education. All of those things were things that we focused on, and he just fit that image of an Illinois State basketball player at that time.
We appreciate that. Very kind words. All right. So, Coach, this is where we start to wrap it up. So, Any final statements, thoughts you want to give us here before we wrap the episode 24 up?
Well, the only thing that I would say is that, I'm just really thankful for the opportunity to be a part of Illinois State basketball history. I'm really happy that I was able to coach under Bob Donewald, because he has impacted my life as much off the floor as he did on the floor. Not only as my coach, but as a friend, and the work ethic that he instilled in me. One thing, you couldn't be late for anything with Donald. You couldn't be late. So we would have meetings at his house, and I'd be sitting out in the car half an hour before the meeting, just to make sure I wasn't late. But instilling that into me had this carryover into my life now, and I'm never late for anything unless my wife makes me late. But otherwise, I'm on time, and it's just, my life has been positively influenced by my experience with Bob Donewald and Illinois State. And I want to say, too, about Bob, that for me, the most important thing for him was his family. The second was his players. And the third was his coaching staff and Illinois State University itself. I think he would have done anything for the university. So, and it was a pleasure coaching under him.
Oh, that is awesome, Coach. And again, like I said earlier, from the guys you recruited, my teammates, Sonny, Gerard, Ricky, Randy, we want to say thank you for giving us the opportunity to be Redbirds, and it's such a gift, and love it. So with that, before I start crying, with that, episode 24 with Coach Terry Smith, this is a wrap. Hit it, Mr. Engineer. We got clapping.